Good morning, Matt Waldman. Happy New Week. Unless you're invested in the stock market, I don't know anything about that, but I see people jumping out the window of my next door neighbor's house. I don't
That sounds like fantasy. Sounds like fantasy GMs who are like short timers with everything.
know.
So this is the opportunity to buy, right? That's what they say.
That's what I'm doing. Before we get into like some of the other issues, I did want to talk about there's an injury to Puka Nacua that we're hearing about, a knee injury that suffered in practice. He left practice early yesterday. It's a knee issue. They say it's a tweak. Adam Schefter's reporting today that it's a week-to-week situation. He should be fine for the start of the regular season. I know a lot of people are going to immediately start drawing lines to Cooper Kupp and being told the same thing about him last year. This seems like a totally different situation. But bigger picture, two things. How do you feel about the reactions to this? I mean, are you feeling the overreaction? Are you feeling we should run away from it? But also, there's more to it. I know ESPN, one of their insiders, had a report from Rams camp where he thought Cooper Kupp was getting the wide receiver one treatment, right? Like watching a practice. I think it was a Thursday session. And he said it looked like the Triple Crown winning Cooper Kupp season where Matthew Stafford just wasn't looking any other way during the session he saw. I talked to Kirk Morrison from SiriusXM NFL Radio Friday night. He told me the same thing. He said, man, Kupp looks like he's dead on point. And I just asked him, like, so what about, Puka? We're all treating him as fantasy managers like he's going to be something on par with last year. He finished as wide receiver 4. He's currently going as wide receiver 7 with the 10th pick overall. So where are we at? Feel it or fuck it on Puka Nacua? Were we already overstating the case on him knowing Kupp is healthy, or are we fearing the past in Cooper Kupp more than we should?
I think it's a combination of both, and I think you have to draw a line with what we see in the news and say this is the value line. This is where This is where I'm not taking him. This is where I'm absolutely taking him, even though the fear has caused me to lower him a little bit. I was lower on Kupp this year, probably than most, but I've just raised him up my rankings back to being like a top 15 player. Top 15 receiver, and we'll probably continue to raise him up with that kind of news. But I still think that we're also hearing that Demarcus Robinson from Puka Nacua can run any route and is a good backside X, and
the kind of receiver Matthew Stafford likes to look for in key situations.
Yeah,
that was one of Morrison's points to me. And by the way, it was Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. It's easy to get him and Dan Graziano confused. So I wanted to get that right. But Morrison's case was it's not just Kupp, but it's like the late season emergence of Demarcus Robinson is a trusted source. The addition of Blake Corum to a backfield already having Kyron Williams. There's a lot of pieces there. He threw in the Colby Parkinson card too. I'm not playing that one. I'll let others do that. But he said there's a lot of options here in this
Kirk
offense.
maybe covered him at the end of his career. So
Kirk is also covering the Rams on a daily basis, aside from his SiriusXM NFL radio gig. So he's pretty familiar with the team. But I think, just in general, it's possible. Like we're drafting, we often draft last year's best team. I mean, Puka was a member of last year's best team. One of last year's best players is a wide receiver 4. Came out of nowhere. But just in general, like these moment-by-moment things, are we totally overreacting to this knee injury?
No, but I think that there's a line where a lot of people are. I'll put it that way. Like, I think should you move Puka Nacua down to, say, maybe a high-end wide receiver 2?
Maybe you already should have.
And maybe already should have based on all the news? Right. Yes, because healthy enough to be on the field and healthy enough to perform at the level that you're capable of are two very different things in the NFL. And as we've learned and we've talked about a lot this offseason, that's often the case. Oftentimes they get back on the field because the coaches want them there to be assignment sound, to make sure that they're being available for the gimmies, the layups, the things that sometimes guys mess up on a regular basis. Who are younger players who are athletically capable of being starters but aren't conceptually capable of getting open at the level they are. Like, say, Ricky Pearsall in San Francisco right now. More than enough athlete to be a top-end wide receiver in the league. But, as being reported right now, he's not getting separation that Chris Conley and Juan Jennings, who are not near the athletes that he is. Because he doesn't know the offense as well, and that's often happens. So I think what you have to really look at here too is that it's not just about last year's team versus this year's team and not knowing what this year's team is. It's also about knowing what did Cooper Kupp have around him when he had that big season. And I would say the answer is he didn't have Puka Nacua and Demarcus Robinson, and he didn't have much of a running game that they felt great about. So I think that it is going to be more balanced, but the question now is who's the best value? And I would say right now it's going to change. So Cooper Kupp's the best value right now. In 2 weeks, it might be Puka Nacua.
Yeah, right now, wide receiver 23 going at the 3-4 turn is Cooper Kupp. Look for those and look for that, 10th pick overall. That gap is going to close. One's going to fall, one's going to rise, and it's going to get a little closer. And maybe that's where it should have been. We'll find out over the course of time. But it's just an interesting story in that, seeing the reactions to it on the X machine and elsewhere, they are copious. So if you're out there running through the mean streets of your best ball rooms, etc., take pause. It's funny because I did a FFPC, my pros versus Joe's draft last weekend. I was coming to the tail end of the first round, and it's there's a lot of options, and I'm presented with a decision between Puka Nacua and Garrett Wilson. And, I took Puka Nacua and I totally instantly regretted it. I said I should have taken Garrett Wilson. Now, I could also overreact to today's news where Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson are having a hard time getting on the same page. I'm suspecting they'll get there before all is said and done. But I was already a little bit concerned about Puka, feeling like sometimes you feel like you're drafting someone at a perceived ceiling. At least he's reached that ceiling before. There are other players we're drafting at ceilings that they've never come close to achieving. I'm looking at you, Drake London, and not without good reason, right? But I mean, we do that. We try to project going forward. So I think if you're trying to project in this case the value of Puka Nacua, it's fair to remember that was a historic season last year.
And I think there's an important thing to note here, Bob, that you're bringing up. That's a great point. I mean, yes, he had 105 receptions, 1,486 yards, and that is repeatable if some of the conditions exist to be there. But let's remember, Cooper Kupp, when you said he didn't play till week 5, during those weeks that Kupp was absent, Nacua earned 52 of his 159 targets, 13 targets per game. When Kupp was in the lineup the rest of the year, Nacua averaged 8.9 targets, which was a 32% decline from his September volume. So, that 8.9 target per game average with Kupp in the lineup still strong enough for it to get near wide receiver 1 territory, but it's just not elite.
199. I think it was the number I had. 199 in the games they played together, with Puka getting 100, Kupp getting 99.
Yeah.
So maybe a little closer, a little less distance between them.
And let's remember, then again, Kupp, when he returned to the field, was he Cooper Kupp 100% healthy, or was he healthy enough to be on the field? And I would say that right now, I've got Kupp 16th on my wide receiver board at Football Guys. I have Puka Nacua 17th, and I just dropped Nacua based on that injury, just because but if he falls to the mid, if he's a wide receiver 2, right, I would take him there easily.
For sure.
I have Garrett Wilson 11th. I also had Garrett Wilson, I think, 4th overall until I started seeing.
Yeah, but you hate Aaron Rodgers.
No, I like Aaron Rodgers. Okay, Bloom hates Aaron Rodgers. I think he hates Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and all those guys. No, right, I think my fear is more than anything is that they weren't going to be on the same page right away. And that was something that I did comment on, is that, I hope they will. But then when we started seeing Rodgers skip some time, even though it wasn't as big of a deal as people made it, but we're seeing them not be completely on the same page. That makes sense, because it took Devontae Adams 3 years to be on the same page and learn the things he needed to learn. And McConkey hasn't had a guy who's going to Wilson's not the guy who hasn't had the high-level conceptual adjustments that a quarterback can make who's really good. He's had Zach Wilson. So that was Zach Wilson's weakness. So I still have Garrett Wilson at, wide receiver 11. That's still strong. But
I'd like to remind everyone that Aaron Rodgers just told me about a week ago that Garrett Wilson has the same kind of drive and desire and talent is another receiver he played with named Devontae Adams.
Yep.
Not that he is Devontae Adams yet, but he has those same characteristics. Look, they're going to battle it out and work it through, and I'm guessing Garrett Wilson will be very good, and probably Aaron Rodgers will be better than people are paying him to be right now because he's like quarterback 20. All right, let's. You know what I hate, Matt? I hate nail polish. Actually, I don't really give a rat's ass.
Yeah, I bet you don't.
I don't really give a rat's ass about nail polish. Obviously, some people do.
Some of your favorite guitarists probably wear nail polish.
Who did I see just the other day? Steve Stevens. I was watching. Dude, Steve Stevens is a great guy. I know him a little bit. Best known as a guitarist for Billy Idol. But I was watching him do a little Led Zeppelin, showing everyone in the world how to do the Whole Lot of Love riff right, because nobody does it right. Both hands. So anyway, you're right. I do.
Nail polish are the tattoos of like this generation, this new generation.
Caleb Williams. I don't know if we bring this up. If you missed it, Amari Toomer went off on Caleb Williams because Caleb asked everyone to tidy up the locker room, and he's a damn rookie with nail polish, and you don't talk to Amari Toomer like that. I guess. I don't know. Being a talking head requires you to have some outrage at times. I am not outraged by anything about Caleb Williams, but I'm not sure he's going to be a top 10 quarterback as a rookie. Where are you at, Matt Waldman? Caleb Williams, top 10 as a rookie, feel it or fuck it?
I'm starting to feel it. I think I don't know if I would feel it enough to make that bet, knowing what else is around and available with quarterbacks. But if you happen to get him a little bit lower than you expected based on ADP, he slips enough that you're like, yeah, it's worthwhile now. Some of the players I wanted, I didn't get, and Caleb Williams is sitting there. With those three weapons he has at receiver, and just knowing what he's about, this is a very good improvisational player. He's also someone that can play within structure, and the things made about him are overblown by old school people or people who are just trying to get a paycheck, and they're trying to think what would be something that would just be an easy thing to criticize. And then when I see him again, when I actually have to interview him and see him on TV, I can do the little side apology, and he won't be that offended with me because it's weak sauce in the first place. But so I would say Amani Toomer probably picked his poison and said, I would say fuck the producer who told him that he had to do some phony outrage.
Do you feel like, though, this was more like, like he threw the nail polish in gratuitously, which probably says something that, it was obviously on his mind. But this is just like he's a rookie still. He's got to prove it. I mean, this is like
he's the leader of the leader of the franchise. They came in and made him the director of operations. If you come in as the director of operations and you're just going to be some meat bullshit like I'm going to follow what everyone tells me to do, and I'm not going to establish what I want my team's face to look like. As long as you're not a dick elsewhere and you're like performing and working hard. Telling people that is setting the tone of the culture of what you want. And if that means showing respect to some people who are in the building that maybe they didn't feel like needed to be, that's fine. I'll just end it. I'll put it this way. Frank Gore, when he was a rookie, I was told that the rest of that 49ers team, after a tight loss, they were all joking around and talking about where they were, laughing and cutting up and talking about what club they were going to that night. And Frank Gore literally told everybody to shut up and screamed. Rookie Frank Gore screamed at everybody in the locker room and said, "You don't take the game seriously enough. And I hope that those of you who are doing this aren't on the team anymore if you don't figure out that winning makes a difference here, and that we need to, and that if you're just joking and lighthearted and don't give a fuck about winning, I don't want you here." And that was a rookie, and I would say, he took leadership of what was important. And I know that cleaning up may not seem as important as losing a tight game and laughing about it, but it's about setting a culture. And they know that in and out. And I think this is a non-issue. It just earned Amani Toomer some brownie points so he doesn't get fired by the producer, I guess. I don't know.
Totally on board with you. Totally open to the possibility of Caleb Williams being a top 10 rookie, top 10 quarterback as a rookie. I think it's more likely to be a healthy Jaden Daniels if I had to pick between the two. But you're paying more for Jaden Daniels. I think, both reasonably priced.
Just for fun, we need to make a bet. We need to figure out the terms of the bet. You can bet on Jalen Daniels because you believe that. I'm going to bet on Caleb. I just think Caleb's straight up 10 times better, and I think
it has a better supporting cast, or at least a better receiving core. I would totally agree with that. Although a lot of positive talk out of training camp about that Terry McLaurin you hate so much.
Yeah, the bumblebee, the bumblebee pass clapper. That's true. But we'll figure something out.
It's the rushing ability, right? So we'll talk about it more as we get closer to the season. But I don't disagree with you. Like I've become more enamored. Obviously, has plenty of mobility. He's not the runner Jaden Daniels is. He's not going to be that guy racing down the field. And by the way, Jaden Daniels might not be that guy after a couple big hits either. So be careful.
Yeah, he might Marcus Mariota himself.
Be careful, Jaden. But he does have that mobility, something you mentioned, to extend plays. And I think that's a superpower in the NFL. Ask Patrick Mahomes if you're one of those guys who has that level of mobility where you can go out and then the arm talent to throw those off-platform kind of passes, and you have a receiving core with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, maybe Roma Dunze. You're probably going to be in pretty good shape.
DeAndre Swift,
hell with that guy.
See, now you're on board. All right.
All right, J.K. Dobbins. Feeling fucking wide receiver, top 36 running back this week. This week. Not this week. Probably this year.
There's probably a better... The odds are more likely that DeAndre Swift has a better season than J.K. Dobbins, but I like J.K. Dobbins. And I love, he's selling the hype, saying that he feels like he's what he was in college. He hasn't felt this good since he was in college, and that's great. I hope that it continues. If it continues, not only do I think he could be, if he stays healthy like he thinks that he's ready to turn the corner here, I think you could remove the 3, and that's probably likely where he'll be, is top 6 at running back. He's that talented. So I'm hopeful, but Achilles rehabs aren't like what they used to be. So it's very possible. I would say this, where you can get him, I'm taking him in every draft I can get him in that ADP range.
He has been moving up a little bit. I'm double checking his current ADP. Gus, I have more shares of Gus Edwards right now as running back 37, and I think he's expected to be the lead back there.
Yep.
People I've talked to who cover the team on a daily basis.
And the red zone guy.
Yeah, and for sure the red zone guy. I don't know if 13 touchdowns we got last year is going to be the standard, but Dobbins at running back 47. With the 146 pick overall, sure, I'm going to have some of that too. It's and also, again, I'm going to go ahead and stipulate to the people out there going, well, how are you going to have shares of a guy if you're drafting one team? Well, I'm not drafting one team. I'm drafting literally thousands of teams. So yes, I understand where you're at. And as we get closer to the end of August, we'll start narrowing some of these down to either ors. But part of this is how you construct your roster at this point. And you probably already know this, but if you built a ton of stability into your lineup early on, then yes, that's when you take chances later on. If you took some guys that maybe you don't feel as comfortable about at the high end of swinging for upside there, maybe you take a safer play or what you perceive to be a safer play in Gus Edwards. So we'll let that all play out over the course of the next couple weeks. Justin Herbert, speaking of Los Angeles, if healthy, is he of value as a low-end quarterback too? Currently going as quarterback 17. He's got the foot issue. He'll be back in a couple weeks. But the real concern everyone has is they're not going to throw the football.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of saying fuck that. I think they're going to throw it enough that he can be a high-end quarterback 2, low-end quarterback 1 still. They're not going to turn the ship around, in terms of turning it into Bo Schembechler Jr.'s offense. That Jim Harbaugh liked doing at Michigan right away. They still need to get better offensive linemen. I know that the receivers aren't an amazing set in terms of the depth chart right now, but Herbert has done well with receivers who aren't big name guys. I mean, yeah, you can say, well, they have Keenan Allen, they had Mike Williams. Well, when they were healthy, he had them. When they weren't, he still performed pretty well with guys like Jalen Guyton, and was Josh Palmer airing it out, So I think what you're going to see is enough improvement with the ground game that you'll see more play action. And, Greg Roman hasn't had a quarterback like Herbert. So I don't think, I know his offense is specialized in a certain way, and people fear that he's just going to play his part and saying, I'm hired to be this way, and this is what I'm going to do. But I think that it will take all of like 3 or 4 bad games with Justin Herbert for Jim Harbaugh to look and go, we gotta let this guy throw the ball more if we're losing.
Winning is the priority there. Just for all of you out there, if you're listening to this, you can go a little deeper on this. In this week's Fantasy Notebook, totally free of football, guys. I delve into this very story and maybe have some of the opinions of one Matt Waldman included in it. Also hit on it on my 10-minute daily update podcast, which you can get every morning, like at 5:30 a.m.
And if you want to hear Bob Harris at 5:30 a.m., then
that's what nobody needs.
I don't know, it might wake you up. That's for sure. For some, hey, look, I think we're a good match. You got people who want to wake up with you, and then I'm the one that I hear. I'm the one that I hear from people that say, my wife's the only person you want to. I want to hear it. When we go to sleep and you listen to a podcast. So. And
then I'm on the radio from 10 until midnight, so there's no escape. I mean, whether you want it first thing in the morning or the last thing of the night, I'm here for it. By the way, Matt Waldman will be on the program tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern time.
We'll definitely put you to sleep. There we go.
All right. Something I hit on in this morning's podcast, the talk in Pittsburgh, ESPN's Dan Graziano reporting that he thinks the competition at quarterback in Pittsburgh is more wide open than people believe. He thinks the Steelers are kind of selling us on the notion that Russell Wilson was the leader just because that's how it should look, or it's easier to manage that expectation. But Justin Fields has gotten a lot of work the last couple of weeks, or the last week, basically with a issue with Russell Wilson's calf. Wilson's back on the field, but in general, and I've seen other reporters reporting totally the opposite. They are not buying into this, Justin Fields hype. Do you believe Justin Fields is making a move for the starting job?
No, I don't believe it. I think it's possible. And I'm not just slamming the door shut on that possibility, but I think that if they felt that Fields was making a move, they would have been splitting reps probably at a level more than what we've heard. And I think that Fields is a guy that will have a package of plays in every game, probably in the red zone. They'll probably use him more as a runner. They'll probably use him in certain situations where they can really leverage his skill set and let him see playing time. But I think Wilson's the guy they're going to roll with.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I get the argument, right? Like, Graziano's point is like they're not financially invested. I mean, Russell Wilson's getting $38 million this year, and the Steelers are paying almost none of that, or very little of that. And in fact, they're paying Justin Fields more this year. But also from a fantasy perspective, like if you're out there, I think Russell Wilson's current ADP is quarterback 29. Justin Fields is quarterback 31. If you're playing best balls and you're investing in multiple quarterbacks, maybe going 3 quarterbacks deep, I can see Justin Fields. We know, like if he's on the field, 18.3 points per game last season was more than pretty much every other quarterback you're drafting ahead of him for the most part, or at least in that same range. So, including Russell Wilson. So there's something to be said for that. But I'm kind of with you. I think this is maybe a little bit overblown, the notion, just because, we get that uncertainty in our head. Oh, Russell Wilson's got a calf injury.
I mean, listen, there's news and then there's speculation, and training camp is a speculative process, and it's also one where people want you to read what they have to say because they're competing for that in this level. And I'm sure that there are editors in addition to producers who say, hey, if you think that there's a possibility that, I don't even think a guy like Dan Graziano needs an editor to tell him what's the most enticing potential story here that we can speculate, because it is speculation and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think it's a little bit more, it's not as gratuitous as what Amani Toomer did. Dan's a little bit more of a professional at this level in terms of seasoning. He doesn't have to throw out the nail polish. He can just say, "Oh, potential quarterback competition." So.
All right. Well, Denver ruined Bo Nix by starting him immediately. Feel it or fuck it.
Nah, fuck it. I don't think they're going to ruin it. I think
he'll be fine.
I think he's going to be fine. He checks the ball down well. I think he makes more plays off script than people realize in a positive sense. He reads defenses reasonably well for a rookie. He's going to have some ups and downs, but I think this year is kind of being more of a. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a Mac Jones-esque sort of first year that people find promising, and then we'll see if they can prevent it from being ruined the way the Patriots did.
Yeah, I feel like Sean Payton has figured this thing out with quarterbacks before. He'll figure it out again. This is kind of his hand-picked prospect here. Maybe he would have preferred somebody else, but he's happy enough with Bo Nix to draft him 12th overall. I think they're going to be okay. Cam Jordan projecting big things. Says he's going to cause a lot of problems. This Chris Olave. This year, feel it or fuck it, Chris Olave, currently wide receiver 11-ish.
Listen, I'm lower on Olave, and I loved him coming out of school, and it's only because the guy who I'm worried about, projecting big problems for might be on his offense, which is Derek Carr and that offensive line. If that offensive line can stay intact and that left tackle, the tackle spots can get shored up. Derek Carr is kind of the Kerry Collins of this generation. You give him enough time, and he can make plays and support fantasy production. But if you don't, then things fall apart in a way where Chris Olave is going to be that 6 for 67 or 4 for 50 kind of guy where you could see him get hot early and then suddenly it all falls apart in the game, and you're left scratching your head about. It was looking so promising early, and I feel like that's the case with this. So I have Chris Olave as a wide receiver too, but it's more of a low-end wide receiver too right now.
Yeah, he's right at that, and I was correct. The sign you're drafting too much is when you know off the top of your head Chris Olave is the average draft position. 17th overall, going just ahead of guys like Drake London, who, again, is a guy we're drafting at a perceived ceiling we have yet to see yet. I think it might be higher for Drake London even, but we have not seen it with Olave. We haven't seen quite that high. We're projecting a little bit with him as well, and I'm not sure I'm buying it. But Clint Kubiak, with the new coordinator, hope springs eternal. A lot of positive talk about Alvin Kamara and that offense as well. But just generally speaking, do you trust teammates projecting value about teammates?
No, fuck no. This is the biggest minefield that you should be able to avoid in training camp. Is having other players talk about their teammates or teammates going, draft me this year, or players saying, draft me this year. What do you think they're going to say? And they're being supportive and a little bit on the obvious positive, and they may like what they've seen, but a defensive end talking about a wide receiver, about the only thing they have in common is basically how to release against tight coverage at the line, because they use the same moves essentially. So that's great. But other than that, it's just like the NFL top 100. They all
Mahomes would like a word.
All those guys, yeah, probably. All those guys get enamored with speed and size and power because that's what they deal with.
Why?
Very few of them talk about technique. Very few of them talk about conceptual stuff.
I feel like this is a backhanded slap at Bob Harris.
Oh, really? I didn't know. Hey, listen, I'll come with the forehand if I try, but I have a feeling I'm going to get a counter. But
two things, Matt Waldman.
Yeah.
Number one, if you've ever drafted with any NFL players, you will realize very few of them know a damn thing about fantasy football.
Right.
And also what you said is true. They're going to be bumping up their teammates and their own status any chance.
The more minute the detail of their observations, the more stock I'd put into it.
And by the way, some of them do play fantasy and play it really well, but the vast majority, I've been in drafts with Kendrick Bourne drafting Robbie Gould in round 2. Come on, man. Are we forgetting about Parker Washington in Jacksonville?
I think we might be, because
I'm not. Many dynasty shares, so we'll be there 20 years from now.
And I think he's a late round dart throw. I think he's one of those guys, if you're in a 20-team 20 round draft, he's a late round dart throw that's reasonable. He should be high on your waiver wire list for guys to monitor during the late training camp, because once the early part of training camp, we're going to hear lots about highlight worthy athletic plays that gets everybody excited. Later part of training camp is when the offenses get into the stage of are the receivers adjusting to what the quarterbacks are trying to do against more complex defenses, against certain game plan type of things. We're going to see more realistic football moments, and then you start seeing these receivers like the Aaron Rodgers stuff, where with Romeo Doubs is the perfect example. 2 years ago, Romeo Doubs, play after play after play, he's athletic, he leaps high, he catches the ball, and he's fast. But then later on, Aaron Rodgers is saying none of these guys are going to get playing time, if they can't make adjustments with me, and this was like week 3, week 4 of training camp. So it's that period of time where we'll see guys like, Parker Washington's ability to adjust with Trevor Lawrence come to the fore. And that's where maybe if you have injuries, you can take him off the monitor list and pick him up off the waiver wire before the season starts.
I do have shares of Parker, so I'm not kidding. And I'm and I thought he kind of got thrown into the fray at an interesting point last year, and he acquitted himself well. I'm kind of intrigued at him going forward. JaTavion Sanders, I have not invested in this year, but all of a sudden with Tommy Tremble dealing with a calf injury and Ian Thomas out until maybe the start of the season, they added Jacob Hollister. I'm not sure if he's a threat to anybody. JaTavion Sanders will he earn a meaningful production as a rookie?
I think that he'll have meaningful games, but I don't think he's going to be a weekly guy that you're going to feel great about right away. And that just depends on whether these other guys come back and are healthy. Because when they say the report is he's going to earn more meaningful opportunities, that doesn't translate to production. It just may mean more snaps. Now, more snaps means more production on a certain level, but that doesn't mean – that just means – is he now a bye-week option, or is he an every-week starter? And I don't think we're looking at every-week starter material just yet, though he's promising for Dynasty.
I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here and say this could be said of any Carolina tight end since what? Yeah. What? It's been a while.
Greg Olsen. Yep.
All right. Yeah. I was going back further, but I'm glad
Leslie Walls? You were going to do that?
That's there you go. I was heading for Leslie Walls, but I had to stop and think for a second and say, oh, wait, there was Greg Olsen here. All right. In New England, Ben Volin created quite the stir, but he's not alone. I talked to Tom King of the Nashua Telegram, who said the same thing that Ben Volin said. Joe Milton is outperforming Drake Maye. Joe Milton, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, has a very big arm, throws the ball very deep, and has other issues with his game. That's why Drake Maye was a first-round pick, and Joe Milton was not. I heard some other reporting that one of the issues for Drake Maye earlier, and by the way, Volin came out and said the last 4 days Maye has been better and clearly is the number 2, and I think that's reasonable. But one of the issues was that Alex Van Pelt's offense is very rigid. It requires the quarterback to be in a certain place with his feet positioned a certain way to make the throw at a certain point, all those things, and that's not the kind of style of play that Drake Maye is familiar with. Where are we at on all this?
Drake Maye's feet were a problem when he entered school, so now he's going to be in an offense where he's going to have to be super sharp with his feet. That's scary. I'll just put it that way. It's going to be a scary year 1 for him to be on the field, so I think we're going to see a lot of Jacoby Brissett, and that's probably
Jacoby
good.
Brissett would agree with that.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think Maye's going to need some time, and he'll get it. The feet can get together pretty quickly in terms of within the span of the year if you work at it, but he's going to need some time to do that because he's learning a lot right now. So, Milton, the whole Milton outperforming Maye, I think that can be somewhat superficial, and part of that is big body, big arm, speedy guy, good athlete, but it's also. It's not just that, and I don't, there's some good reporters being talked about here who you mentioned. Some of it is just, do we really understand the context of what's being thrown out there? As Ed Valentine talked about at Big Blue View, a couple of years ago when Brian Dable came in, he put Daniel Jones in nothing but third and long situations against Wink Martindale's like most devastating blitz packages because he just wanted to see how Daniel Jones was going to emotionally handle the day-to-day of basically getting pounded, in terms of his game getting pounded. And I think that, doesn't mean whether he's going to get the results, but whether he just keep coming back and being aggressive. And I think that with Milton, we just don't know whether or not he got easy looks, whether he was put in there as a kind of a tool to help their defense be evaluated with certain types of plays, and that it wasn't really about Milton as much as it was about greasing the skids to make it difficult for the defense, or whether they wanted to see Milton in certain situations where they didn't think he'd be good, and maybe he's shown them a little bit more than they thought, or they wanted to test him. Sometimes, as Ed mentions, at least in Giants camp or in other camps he's seen, and I've seen this as well, they'll take guys who then give them first team reps, and then they get cut the next week because they just wanted confirmation that the guy couldn't do something, and sure enough, he showed that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think just generally speaking, and I say this as old people, a lifetime of failures generally followed by some level of success. It's a relative thing, right? Like, so failures are often things that spur on successes or give you the knowledge. The knowledge you need to have success or achieve success. Isiah Pacheco has been successful. Will he get an every down role in 2024? That's what some of the reporting is. How do you feel about that?
I think he's capable of doing that. I don't think that's going to happen based on what Andy Reid's offense has always been about. He's always been a committee guy. It may mean that Pacheco gets a higher share and that it will translate to running back one level production for sure. But I don't think you're going to see a dominant top 5 season out of him unless injuries hit and they feel like they're forced to do it. And I think there's enough talent on that team that they can use a variety of different players for different roles to give Pacheco some time off when they need to.
Isiah Pacheco, running back 11, much like Chris Olave was wide receiver 11. I remember all the 11s. I think he's priced.
Arch
priced
Leister,
right.
Was he a number 11?
I believe he might have been.
Yeah.
Believe me, priced right though. For me, I like the pricing and I like the role, even if he isn't the primary receiving threat there. Brock Bowers, top 12 fantasy tight end this year. He's being drafted as such. Matt Waldman.
I'm starting to believe, because I think first we heard earlier in camp about the tight end coach saying, well, tight ends, I view tight ends as guys who can block first. But I think what we were looking for was, does that mean that we're viewing Brock Bowers as a receiver? Because I find it hard to believe that we're going to see Brock Bowers benched and this tight end coach still have a job after they drafted him so early and knowing what he can do. And after what we've seen in camp thus far, he's been fairly unstoppable in terms of showing his athletic ability. Now, that's going to get more difficult as we see, more realistic coverage looks and things like that. But with Michael Gallup retiring, you've got Trey Tucker, who's an intriguing option. Still, Brock Bowers or Jacoby Myers? Who do you? I like Jacoby Myers, but I love
wide receiver 24 last year.
Yeah,
like he's perennially overlooked. But so,
yeah,
I'm kind of with you here. Kirk Morrison told me he spent a fair amount of time at Raiders training camp. He didn't see him drop the ball. Yeah. Nothing. 0 drops. Just catches everything. And we heard Devontae Adams call him the businessman. He shows up, does the job. So I'm intrigued, and I do think like we're overplaying the role. Like, and by the way, Kirk said that we're gonna see Mayer, that he's very good. Do not forget this guy. He's a very good player. But there's room for both of them to have some role in this offense, which would obviously not come at the expense of Devontae Adams. Sorry, Jacoby Meyer fans. Yeah. That's probably and like a varied role where Bowers is not actually a true inline tight end. Most of the time, I think that makes sense as well.
And I think Gardner Minshew's going to wind up the starter.
Crazy. Nobody thinks that.
I still think it's going to wind up ending that way.
We'll see. I mean, I think the problem for that is Antonio Pierce has set an expectation that that Minshew has to really win the job.
Yeah.
Again, Morrison thinks that it's going to be O'Connell. Other people, the reporting's been
tight.
fairly 50-50. Hondo Carpenter from SI.com will bite you if you try to tell him that Antonio Pierce was lying when he said this. I think this is all about a culture issue, right? Antonio Pierce, former player. It's the same reason, he likes to run the ball. This guy did well at the end of the year. Why did the locker room clamor to have him back, right? Why was there nearly a revolt if they were going to hire somebody else, or a revolt implied if Antonio Pierce didn't get the job? So this feels like that kind of culture thing where if it's even close, Aiden O'Connell gets the job because he last had the job.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think that they're going to let Aiden O'Connell prove that he doesn't deserve to be on the field. So I think by week 7 we're going to see Gardner Minshew.
I think that would be more likely. I think O'Connell starting the season and then at some point losing that job more so than Minshew winning it, because we already know what Minshew can do. Devon Achane will be the lead back in Miami. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm starting to feel it a little bit more with him adding the weight and them talking about trying to find more ways to put him on the field. But I don't think he's going to be the lead back in terms of touches. He's going to be the lead back in terms of fantasy production for fantasy GMs. But really, you're still going to see plenty of Raheem Mostert or whoever else whether it's Jalen Wright, or if one of either Jeff Wilson or Chris Brooks, whoever stays in camp there, even Salvin Ahmed, then, but one of those guys will play that north-south role where they're going to give Devon Achane more of the east-west open space type of thing, where he's going to be that high efficiency per touch option who's kind of the outlier exception to the rule in fantasy, where you want the snaps guy, and he doesn't have that high snap count. But it'll be, I think that it will be closer than what it was last year.
Yeah,
on a per game basis.
I think so too. I think we're overstated the case with Devon Achane's fantasy price. He's been running back 7 to 8, going almost exclusively the second round. Raheem Mostert, in the 7th round seems like a way more appealing to me, 7th or 8th round, depending on when you were drafting, because I don't think he goes away. But I think you're right. I think if at all possible, the younger player will move him to front. Justice Hill, is he the fantasy reserve to have behind Mr. Derrick Henry?
He's the fantasy reserve behind Derrick Henry, but not to have.
Not to have.
There's gonna be a veteran. I like Justice Hill's game. He's quick in space. He overcame an Achilles injury and looks fairly explosive. He can catch. He's a tough runner for his size. But if they're gonna go with a volume back, and they will, because that's what John Harbaugh's MO has always been, you'll see someone like Dalvin Cook get called back, or Kareem Hunt, and I know a lot of blah about that too, but they'll find somebody who's on waivers, later on, that they feel like that they can put in there and be the main back who can kind of do it all for them.
All right, we'll close it up. I don't disagree with any of that. Let's close it up with this. Breece Hall over Bijan Robinson in fantasy. Feel it or totally fucking feel it?
I meant feel it. I know you're totally fucking feeling it, but
I'm not it's close. The gap is closer. I was just trying to set the battlefield here.
Yeah, you said it very well. You grease those skins, man. But yeah, I mean, look, the fact that he's such a good receiver, that Aaron Rodgers has complimented him on his route running and the things that he can do, there's value to that. There's also value to the fact that this offensive line has some spots that are old and injured, and they're great in name, but are they going to be great in game? There's question marks about that, so Rodgers may be checking down a fair bit, especially if Garrett Wilson isn't where he's supposed to be, or Garrett Wilson is where he's supposed to be, but Aaron didn't tell him how he wanted to change things, and they're still arguing about what happened in May, in October. If that happens, then we may see a lot more balls coming Breece Hall's way. But I'm still thinking, I know that they said Tyler Algier is going to get a significant role. I think that's a little bit more of a pat on the ass and saying, keep doing what you're doing, brother. We may need you if Bijan gets hurt.
Right. That's not the history of this Ram-style offense. No. Everyone comes from the McVay tree, was familiar with how Sean McVay handles it, and it's not that way. I'll say this. I thought it was interesting the other day. Aaron Rodgers went 6 of 6 in the red zone, right? Hit 3 to Garrett Wilson, 2 to Breece Hall. But after the session, he said, man, I didn't know. My scouting report did not tell me this guy had this skills. And also, like, I've never been in an offense where the primary red zone read was your running back.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
If I wasn't already on board. Look, I've been on board all along. We saw it last year. The breakaway ability, all that is,
he makes it look easy.
Right. If you took Bijan Robinson, would I say that's stupid? No, that's perfectly reasonable. I think both these guys are very close. And either of them, if either of them wound up being running back one over Christian McCaffrey, I would not be surprised. They're the two that I think have the best chance in that order. But like pretending I can divine with any kind of certainty the values of these two is like a little bit of a you know, I like mine, you can like yours, we'll all be fine.
I'll just say this: I like Breece Hall enough. Go to your little Google machine and type Breece Hall's a nightmare, and you can see all that you need to see about how easy he makes the game look.
And I hope the Avenged Sevenfold song comes up right after that. Nightmare. That's my favorite. It's the theme music for my Sirius XM radio show, which you can listen to tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Matt Waldman will be on at 11. Catch my usual daily update podcast every morning at 5:30. It's the Audible channel, Football Guys. Also, my weekly notebook. Also, Matt Waldman's Gut Check rankings. All of his efforts.
Draft Plan 1.0.
Draft Plan 1.0. I enjoyed it immensely. Also, go to mattwaldman.com. The rookie scouting portfolio is in full force. I got my newsletter on Friday. I've read it like I always do. Going to be coming out with those on a regular basis throughout the course of the season, correct?
Yep, and we have probably an update at the end of this week, early weekend, for the projections and ranking service that I provide. I'll probably do 2 updates in August, so the first one will be this week, at the end of this week. And so that should be something for people to keep an eye out for. You get rankings of every Dynasty player that's likely to see a field or be on an active roster, along with projections. And I may have a little surprise for folks, thanks to a reader who made a suggestion with the spreadsheet, Mr. Derek French. And if that works out well, then I think we may have folks be able to customize the projections.
Ooh,
so we'll see.
Very nice. All right, everybody. I'm going to be gone next week. Matt will find a suitable
I try trading you, but I can't get rid of you.
Tip me. I will be at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio. If you see me come up, I know so I've been asked this before, but if you have a feel or fucking question, don't be shy. I'll answer it. I'll be on the main stage in the first panel on Sunday morning, the first to kick off the entire Sunday edition of that thing. Also, will be hanging out at the Football Guys booth and also be on the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio for 3 hours that day. It's going to be a busy Sunday, but come say hi.
You're a star.
I'm not a star, but I'm willing. All right, man. Let's get out of here. Love you. Bye.